maybe immediately after I cleared campus and started my professional life, I discovered that in this world, generally we tend to gravitate towards the spectacular. We tend to look at the things that actually people who are in the limelight. Everyone tends to look at the things that are spectacular and the successes that people have achieved. Now, as I interacted with the many people in the professions and the successful people, after campus I joined a church which is Sitam Karen. And for those of you who visited Sitam Karen, you know the kind of people who are there. So with the spectacular and the success that I could see as the things that we tend to see, and we tend to try to want to emulate. But I realized behind this spectacular there is the substructure. The superstructure is supported by the substructure. And it's that desire to actually, the substructure is the sum of the things that are done, not seen in the limelight. And the people I interacted with helped me understand that for you to have the substructure standing, you need to work on for you to have the superstructure standing, the substructure has to be established first. Now, with those interactions, I realized developing the substructure requires a constant mentorship and interaction with these people. Realize that without mentorship, you can't develop the substructure. And without the substructure, the superstructure cannot stand. And for you to have the usable space like in this building, you need the structures that will support the superstructure and the substructure. So it's that actually helped me now join with this mentorship journey. And that's what I've been doing with the CBPF and all along. To help people actually, to help myself build on my superstructure and as I work on my substructure and the structures that support that substructure, so that I have an elegant superstructure. That's how I've worked.
Wow, that's deep, right?
Good morning, all. My name is Florence Murila. I have taught at the University of Nairobi for many years, and sometime in 2000, and I was an assistant treasurer, secretary of the Christian Medical Fellowship. And then people started talking about mentoring students. Oh, we must mentor. And I thought to myself, well, Dr. Muhudhia has the time to mentor, Professor Guri has the time to mentor, Dr. Elizabeth Bukusi, she has time to mentor, let her mentor. Let them mentor. I don't have time. I'm a busy doctor. I have a job at the university. I have a private practice. It takes up my whole day. I get home at 2 midnight, 1 a.m. every day. I have no time for mentorship. Let them continue. I will serve in different ways.
Then I went to study neonatology, and I was away for 2 years. And in those 2 years, God spoke to me very clearly. He said to me, I have given you medical students. I give you 350 of them every year, almost. What are you doing with them? The other people may not necessarily be in the medical school. You are there. What will you do with these people? And it was very clear to me what I had to do. And when I got back to my Bible study group, and one of the things the Bible study group was saying is we must all mentor and disciple. There will be no passengers in this Bible study group. And so God was being very, very, very clear about me mentoring younger Christians. And so I prayed and I said, dear Lord, you know I'm busy, you know I live a crazy life. Please show me how to do this. And He was very clear. And I prayed, Lord, now that I've set up my clinic and it's running, please give me someone that will sit there while provided. So it was very, very clear to me. And then at the time that I got back, the university had started a very clear, well, not too clear, it had assigned mentors to various students. So each time the students come, they are assigned a mentor. So I was assigned several students to look after in the undergraduate program. And then in the postgraduate program, I was assigned 2 or 3 every year to mentor and to help with their theses and dissertation and their journey. So for me, it then became quite structured to mentor students. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please clap. I can hear you are trying to clap. Please clap. Thank you so much. To you, Bill.
Yeah, so like you've heard, my name is Bill Dindi. And my journey into mentorship began way back. I grew up in Kitale, the fourth born in a family of 6. And my elder brother happened to get saved first among the children in the family. We were 4 boys and 2 girls. And so he made it his personal assignment to ensure that every one of us got to hear a clear presentation of the gospel and confessed Christ as Savior and Lord. So sometimes he'd use intimidating tactics. You know, like he'd share about how hell would be all fired up and stuff. And so some of us got saved at first as fire insurance against hell, you know, until we got to really understand what it meant to make a personal commitment to follow Christ and all. So he was my first connection with the concept of mentorship, because he was extremely clear on seeing every aspect of our life align to what he believed was God's purpose for our lives. He'd ask us questions. He'd check on our report forms. He was a bit older than the rest of us. He'd follow through with some of those mischiefs of boyhood. He'd follow through on some of our misdeeds and ensure that if our parents had not seen, he'd snitch on us and basically ensure that we were accountable. So I grew up like that until I got to high school, and that was the second instance where the concept of mentorship really got to grow on me. In high school, I was in this school that was had a very effective and clear mentorship process, and I have to appreciate my then principal, who's one of the big names in the education sector in the country, Mr. Haemba, Christopher Simiyu Haemba. We used to call him Sodium. Yeah, Sodi. So Sodi was very keen on mentorship as well. And so from the time I arrived in Form 1, there was a second-year student who was assigned to me to check on every other aspect of my life, and they would report back to the administration on how I'm doing, literally on every aspect of my life. And so everyone, upon getting into Form 2, you'd be assigned a Form 1 student. And so that concept began to grow. But then over time, the school would identify students who are showing an interest and aptitude in this particular space and build them further. And so I was one of those who would get to visit, the privilege of visiting the principal's house twice every term, at the beginning of the term and at the end of the term. And so he would be seated on his rocking chair, asking questions on how we are doing, how our lives are. He'd follow up on our academics. I mean, every other aspect of our lives, up to and including our social life. You know, whether we had girlfriends in the nearby schools and all that. He was very keen on all these aspects of life. And he'd teach us to do the same with other students. And so I was appointed the chapel captain in my final year. And as part of my docket, I had to put together the mentorship structure in the school and work together with the guiding and counseling mistress to ensure that that docket runs effectively. And so again, I got to grow and appreciate that concept a lot more. By the time I was joining university, I knew this is a space I'd like to grow a little more in. And so from the moment I landed at Kenyatta University, I began seeking out for someone who could journey with me. And it just so happened that there was a gentleman who had mentored my brother years earlier. And he was working with Life Ministry, and he had just been assigned to Kenyatta University. And so I connected with Mr. Robert Balusi, and a friendship was struck. long story short, by the time I was done with the 4 years, I was not only mentored, but I was intentionally mentoring other students as well. And I basically continued with that beyond my university life. I'm now working with them and basically mentoring students, discipling, coaching, and that is what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Wow. Thank you so much for that great introduction. And ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, what a great panel to help us think about mentorship this morning. Another round of applause as we now dig deeper into what mentorship is and how we can cultivate that in our lives and in our careers. And to start with you, Benson, why is mentorship so important, and specifically, how can we continue developing in Christian mentorship?
Well, I would say in the Christian circle, mentorship is important. As I said, in the modern world, we tend to look at the things, the people that are in the limelight. But when you look at Christian leadership, or our leader, all of you, I believe, are leaders in some way or another. I say our leadership consists of 3 things: our status, the titles that we have, our stature, where we build our credibility, how we build our credibility and that, and then our substance, how God views us. As Christians, we have the substance, and if you look at it, the substance is what is quite important. If you work on the substance, it becomes easier for you to develop on the credibility. So that's why I say mentorship becomes important in the build-up to the developing that substance. Because in the performance-driven society that we are in, we are more tempted to actually work on how to achieve more, the people we want to associate with, how we will perform and become more successful, the things we want to accumulate and all that, without working on our substance, on how God views us. So I would say success will get more security if we have that. We all have the title, but we also build on the stature so that we are credible people, but also we work on the substance. So the intersection of the status, the stature and substance will actually give us that security in our leadership as leaders. So if we have that intersection, then we'll build on that, we'll actually be credible leaders. As you look at it, I will say from today's exposition of Paul, in Philippians, if you look at Philippians, I think it's Philippians 4, Paul actually, I think, emphasizes on the build-up on that, on the substance, on the build-up of the substance, how God views us. Because he says, you look at it, he says, I'm a Roman and all that. He says what he is, but he says, I count it as loss because of Christ. So when you focus on how God views us, when you build mentorship on trying to develop on how God views us, it becomes easier for you now, because as a leader now, it helps you to become, to get to a level whereby you have nothing to prove, because you have your sense of identity in God. You have nothing to hide, because you've actually surrendered everything to God. You get it? So that helps us. If you build on that status, you will have that concept whereby you've surrendered and everything to God, such that your identity is in God, and you don't fear losing anything, because you surrendered everything to God, and you live a life of integrity before God. So you don't hide. You don't have anything to hide before God, because you have full integrity before God. So that's why I say, if you build on that mentorship, we'll be able to actually develop leaders who have those 3 things: nothing to prove, nothing to hide, and nothing to lose. Because first of all, they have the identity in God. They've surrendered everything to God, so they fear nothing to lose, and they live a life of integrity before God and before men, so they don't fear hiding anything in their lives before people.
Amen. I hope you're taking notes. I'm taking mine mentally, because that's so deep, that we are not leaders because of positions, but we have that credibility to lead. And as we think about lessons learned in leadership, this goes to you, Florence. What are some of the lessons you have learned in your mentorship journey, both as a mentee and now as a mentor?
Thank you. I have learned that people need direction. People need direction. I was speaking to my sister the other day, and we were talking about born-again Christian. He's been a Christian for a long time, yet his life is all messed up. And she said to me, this young man, now he's old, was never discipled. He comes from a very, very good family. He speaks very good English. Quickly rose in his organization to a medical director, etc., etc. So people just sat there and looked at him in awe in this particular organization. But nobody mentored him. So he's a Christian and he's shallow. And so his life has fallen apart. So I have learned that people need direction. A lot of times people come to the Lord and they are not mentored, and quickly they end up in all sorts of cults because nobody mentors them. So people need direction in order to grow in many ways. People need to grow in the area of hard work, reliability. They need to grow to be able to be available, consistent. There are things people need to learn. They need to learn about giving. They need to learn about being kind. It's just things that they need to learn to get along. And the lessons I have learned as I have mentored is that it's an expensive exercise. I have to put aside time in order to be with the I teach medical students, so I mentor them as we go along. So I have to be at work when I'm expected to be, and to do my work and to do it well. And that takes time. I have learned that the best way to mentor and to teach is to have it over a cup of tea or lunch. So a lot of my tutorials are over tea or lunch. That costs money, but it's fun. It's fun. I've also learned that for my little Bible study group of medical students, the best way to have it is to have it at my house. When they come, we have supper, yes, and I'm not able to go and fetch them, and it's usually at night, so I have to pay a taxi to go get them, bring them, and take them back. So it's expensive, but that's okay because the Lord replenishes. Right? So these are the lessons that I'm learning. That it is expensive. When they come, when I take time out to go and sit with them, this is the time I'm supposed to be sitting in my clinic. I pay someone else to sit in my clinic so that I can be with them. So it's costly. But I have also learned that I have grown. I mean, really, I have become richer because I have realized that the greatest wealth is people. Just people. That is the greatest resource you will ever have in life. So I sit with them, I listen, they teach me new things, they tell me where they've been. They have a greater understanding of scripture sometimes than I have. And it's just fun interacting with them. And I've been to many weddings as a consequence, and many birthdays and things like that. So I am also learning and being enriched by being around my mentees. And it's really, really satisfying. And knowing that you are in God's will and doing what God wants you to do, for me, that is really exciting and satisfying.
Wow. Expensive but very fulfilling. Thank you so much, Florence. And Bill, when do we say that mentorship is successful? Because definitely there is mentorship that is successful and one that is not successful. And please, may you share with us some best practices that makes mentorship successful?
Thank you very much. First of all, I think need to just mention that I really connect with what Daktari here said, particularly on the expenses bit. This is what we do with my wife on a day-to-day basis, and there are decisions we've had to make. Over time that are purely informed by that fact. Yeah, we want a space where students can come, and it therefore needs to be ample. So we are a young family, 2 kids. My firstborn is 2.5, 2 years, 6 months. The secondborn is 3 months old now. But we've had to get a spacious home, for instance, just so students can come in their numbers. And when they do, there's ample space, to connect and all that. So I think if we want to be successful mentors, we have to be willing to invest some resources into that. So I really connect with that. But when do we say mentorship has been successful? I'll answer this question in 2 ways. First of all, I'll talk about specific mentorship sessions. A mentorship sitting, for instance. What are some things that need to happen in that particular sitting for us to say mentorship has been successful in that context? But the long-term measure of success in a mentorship relationship, I also say something about that. A gentleman called Keith Webb has written an amazing book called The Coach Model that I'd recommend to all of us. The Coach Model by Keith Webb. And in it, he uses the word coach as an acrostic for the following aspects of the coaching and mentorship process. He says the C stands for connect. And he basically goes on to explain that it's important for us to connect with the mentee. The mentor and mentee must connect. And so in those specific instances when this does not get to happen for one reason or the other, maybe we need to revisit that relationship. There needs to be a connection. So it might be an area of mutual interest that gets the two of you together. Or sometimes it's just chemistry, But mentor and mentee need to connect. And connection also implies that there needs to be regular times of meeting. And that's where some of the challenges that my colleagues have mentioned. We need to be able to commit time to be able to get the mentorship connection to actually happen. But then the O, he says, should stand for outcome, so that in every specific sitting, there needs to be outcomes that have been agreed upon before the actual sitting. We need to be clear on what we want to come out of this particular sitting. This is where if the mentee has particular issues, they need to raise those. They need to bring those out. And one of the things I've found really meaningful is, for instance, to ask the mentee, what would be most meaningful to you today? And so he'd list a number of issues, and we get to converse over that. So we need to connect, we need to have clear outcomes, and then we need to be aware of what the issues are. And this is a particularly important point because Dr. here will agree with me that unless you know what the real issue is, you could merely be treating symptoms that eventually do not help to get this person to be whole again. So it's important for us to be aware of what the issues are. For some of the guys we'll be mentoring, the issue could be deep wounds from their past. And these are issues that need to be brought to the fore, and we need to talk about this. Yeah, so aware of what the issues are. And then the C stands for course or courses. Let's explore different courses of action. Yeah, and I think it's important for the mentor, I found this particularly meaningful, not to tell the mentee what to do, but to be able to help the mentee discover what they need to do. So let them explore several courses of action, and then just help point them to what the right course will be. So find the right course. And then conclude with highlights. Now I kind of feel the H is a bit forced to get the coach acrostic in place. So the highlights is meant to imply what was most meaningful in our engagement today, and as a result of our conversation, what will I do differently? Okay? So what are my highlights? What are my takeaways from this particular conversation? I have found that as I followed these templates, my coaching conversations and coaching sessions with my mentees have been extremely meaningful. Long term, I would say mentorship has been successful when the mentee begins to bear the fruit that is commensurate with the investment that has been put into them. And I'll give a quick example and be done. In the year 2010, Life Ministry, Student Ministries Department organized a mission to Swaziland. And we were working at the University of Swaziland and were basically based there for some 3 months. So in these 3 months, my prayer was that the Lord would give me a group of 5 men that I would pour my life into, because 3 months is a very short time. What could you possibly do that would outlast your being there? So anyway, long story short, I walked into this room, found these 5 freshmen, and began a relationship that outlasted my being there. 3 of the young men were not even born again. So I shared the gospel, the 3 got saved, the other 2 were born again. And so I'd go to the campus twice a week to disciple these 5 guys, and the relationship continued after the 3 months. As we speak today, one particular young man from the group of 5 became very interested in going beyond the normal discipleship relationship to be mentored in a particular skill. As we speak, this young man today, called Melusi Zigalala, he finished his campus in 2014. He joined Campus Crusade for Christ, and as we speak, he's actually serving as the lead mentor of student ministry departments in Madagascar and in Lesotho. I have not been to the 2, but here is a mentee who's actually doing more, probably, in that particular space than what I'm doing. And beyond my being there, we connect actually once every 2 weeks online. So using Facebook Messenger, eventually getting to WhatsApp, and we'd actually have conversations on all issues regarding his life, but particularly in that space that he needed mentorship in. So I can say that particular mentorship relationship has been successful because of what I'm seeing as the fruit of the particular relationship. So long term, just like discipleship, this is meant to be life on life. So you cannot say it is over, this person is successful, but as you observe the trajectory of their life over time, you can be able to discern the success or otherwise of the said relationship.
Wow. His name sounds like speaking in tongues. And I'm happy that that has been an example of a mentorship successful. Our time is really flying very fast, and so allow me to combine 2 questions as we go to the next level. And back to you, Benson. As we think about mentorship, there are 2 words that we have been mentioning over and over again. One is mentee, and the other one is mentor. I would like us to think about the qualities and responsibilities of an effective mentee. And then if you could combine this with, is there anything like peer mentorship? What does that mean?
I would say a good mentee is the quality of a good mentee is a fat person. By fat, I mean faithful, available, and teachable.
Oh, okay.
That's the first part. And just to echo what Dr. said here, generally people tend to seek direction. Once someone is faithful, available, and teachable, it actually, you will find that this person is looking for direction in life. But it actually helps for this person to have a sense of destiny. For me, I'll say a good mentee will be someone who is first of all fat, and then develops a sense of destiny. By sense of destiny, there are 3 aspects I would say. First of all, you need to understand, to have a sense of, develop a need to know God. And it's not about knowing about God, it's knowing God. And I think, for personally, Focus did a great job in helping me understand about knowing God and knowing about God. So the first part is for this mentee to understand, to develop the sense of destiny, to know God. And then the second aspect is to look at the life they are living. You realize that the mentee needs to realize that your life is too short to live a life of compromises. So you need to understand that the life you live is precious before God, the God you know. And then now you need to have a sense, for you to have a purpose in life, realize that you are created for some specific purpose here on earth. So that with that, you have a bigger picture. You live your life as a mentee with a sense of destiny, looking at the bigger picture. That will make you a good mentee. That's how I look at it. Now, on the part of peer mentorship, I'll say peer mentorship exists because I believe in the three aspects of mentorship, whereby you have someone higher up you are looking up to, and then the peers, people in your circle who are actually helping you actually grow, and then now people below you who are looking up to you. That's why I say peer mentorship is important, because with peer mentorship, it helps you develop on some of the gray areas in your life. As I said, remember I said about the substructure and the superstructure and all that. So your peers will help you actually look at some of the things that if they go unchecked, your life will crumble. That's why we need peers in our lives, because they help you build on some of the things that the other people outside your life may not actually be easier to ask you about. So peer mentorship is quite important. So because of the three aspects of mentorship I mentioned.
Excellent. And having had on the mentee side, Florence will help us think about the qualities and responsibilities of a mentor. And if you could please combine that with how does mentorship work in the marketplace? Because most of us here are Christian leaders, but we are getting out into the marketplace. What models of mentorship work there?
Thank you. As a mentor, one has to be willing to communicate things that they know. I realized that over the years, people had invested in me and mentored me. My aunties, my older sisters, the navigators. I'm a navigator. I have a navigator background. And they are heavy on mentoring. There was Joyce Malombe, there was Nick Wanyoike, all these people were there. Florence Wanyoike, Tomaini, and others. And I realized that a lot of people had invested in me. And they had taken their time to invite me to their houses, overnights. I remember when I was a doctor an intern in Nakuru, Nick Wanyoike would come and visit me as he'd visit all the other mentees around the country. So one has to, first of all, communicate what they have, what they had taught me and what I had learned from the Bible, communicate all that, be available to spend time. They were available and they spent time with me. They used their resources to come and be with me wherever I was. So these are
Then all these glossy, beautiful parts of our life. So authenticity and totally opening ourselves out and being vulnerable to each other. I think the others have probably been mentioned in the course of our conversation.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. And I can't believe that 1 hour is over now. It's run so fast. But as we wind up this session, the goal of this summit is to raise transformational leaders who will both change currently their campuses, but also in the marketplace when they leave, so that there is godly impact and transformation in this generation. And as you have shared, there is always a cost to bear as we are mentoring and being mentored. And just as a way of parting short, is there any last words you have for these young leaders? I would start with you, Benson, and then we can finalize with things.
Well, I'll say all leaders need to have well-crafted core values that they need to live by. And so you realize as Christian leaders, looking at understanding that I think as Christian leaders we are all born again, and we understand that we are all saved by grace. So God calls us to be grace receivers, but at the same time be grace givers. So, but when you look at the mentorship part, when people think about grace, grace is not an invitation to indulge. Grace is an invitation to accountability to grow. So as you look at giving grace and receiving grace, it means that you give grace by giving these people undeserved favor, as in you do them and something that they do not deserve. But it's not like you invite them to indulge in some of the bad things. It's rather you invite them to an accountability. As he said, when you share part of your broken parts, you are inviting them to a life of growth. So that's how I look at it in terms of grace receiving and grace giving, because grace is the heart and the true nature of God. Now, when you look at, when I seated at the back there from today's exposition, there is something the expositor said about giving, as in living your life as an example. Not being, he said, God does not call us to prescribe some solution, isn't it? And so as a mentor, I look at it in terms of the 4 steps. Because most of us, most of the time we truncate it into 2 steps. I look at it as discovering the truth as a leader, where you study and devote yourself to study the Word of God and discover the truth. Apply it in your life such that it's applicable in your life. Reap the benefits of that application and then pass it on to someone else. More often than not, when you read something good in the morning in your devotion, you want to pass it on. You haven't applied it in your life, you haven't reaped the benefits of it. But most of the time we just read something good and you want to pass it on. That's how we look at it in most of the mentorship journeys. But I will say, if we embrace the 4 steps, whereby we discover the truth, we study the truth and find it for ourselves, apply it in our lives so that it's applicable in us, and then now reap the benefits. Once we see the benefits of this truth, we can easily pass it on and be credible leaders. And so as you move on as leaders, my final word will be, work at building a credible life. Such that, and even as you look at this, looking at the credible life, I'll go back to the superstructure part, whereby I know all of us want to do something big, something great. But I'll say, have the courage to dream big, to think about a big idea that you want to do. Have that courage to think big and think of that big thing that you want to do, that big superstructure. But at the same time, have the confidence to start small. Don't despise the small beginnings. Have the confidence to start somewhere small. It may be something small. You start in your room or somewhere, but have that confidence to start small. But at the same time, have the courage to build deep. You will only go as far as the depth of what you build on. So develop that courage to actually, the confidence to build something deep, such that you have an established route for you to actually build on your superstructure.
Amen. 2 words about mentorship from an engineer's perspective: substructure and superstructure. Please don't forget that. Florence, parting shot.
Yes, I'll just share one thing from the marketplace, actually. There's a young man whose father was my consultant when I was an intern. And then he was my undergraduate student, then he became my postgraduate student, then he joined the university. And I had the newborn unit, and he came to the newborn unit. Then we had a strike. And he said he was going to go on strike. I said, are you really? Yes. We have an issue. We have an issue in the university. The university is not paying us enough, etc., etc., etc. And I said to him, do you have an issue with the baby that we're looking after? I look after babies. The 900-gram baby, the 1.2 kilo baby, the 4 kilo baby. Do you have an issue with this baby? The mother is sitting there waiting to look up, waiting for you to come and look after this baby. Can you look at this mother and say, I am on strike, and I will not come and look after your baby? Can you, when you get to heaven, then say to the Lord, the university wasn't paying me enough, so I left that baby to die? And he was quite adamant. adamant. A few days later, I spoke to him again. No. He went on, and I asked him the same questions. He came to work. He actually worked. And I asked the group in the university, how many of you would like to be on this rota? If there are 2 of us, we will run the unit. If there are 3 of us, we will run the unit. If I'm left alone, I will run this unit so that the babies survive. And that for me has been mentoring, because I am showing this young man, you cannot walk away because you have a dispute with someone else. And that for me is mentoring in the marketplace, because eventually when I leave, he may have to become the head of this unit, maybe in another 10 years or so. So one also has to think succession as the mentor in this way. A lot of times, doctors have walked up to me and they've said, or I've met them with someone else and said, she was my mentor. And I'm thinking, was I your mentor? So a lot of people are actually looking up to you, and they will look up to you with time, and expect you to lead the way, to set standards, to say things that are correct, to go against the grain, and do what needs to be done. In my Luya language, we have a song that says, Uri borera shina Yesu, luhari wa toto, manaike kenya humenya, ahorera shina Yesu. What it is asking is, what will you tell Jesus if you are not true? His angels are asking, what did you do, Jesus? Always ask yourself that question. Thank you.
Wow. Please go ahead.
I come from the west side as well. So, your song Najua. Lyrics, so all of us said hallelujah. Amen. Now, on this subject, I'll conclude with the words of Dr. Os Guinness, the grandson of the famous Dublin brewer, the guy who began the Guinness brand. Well, the interesting thing is the parents were actually missionaries to China. And so this gentleman is a missionary, a social anthropologist par excellence. So this is what he says regarding mentorship in a book he wrote called Impossible People, that I would also strongly recommend to all of us. Impossible People by Os Guinness, I think wrote about 2 years ago. So on a chapter he discusses mentorship. He gives the example of what happened in the Beijing Olympics of 2008. In the Beijing Olympics 2008, for the first time in the history of the Olympics 4x100 meter relay, there was no American on the podium. Not in the men's race and not in the women's race. Yet, the American team had the 100 meters world record holder among the men, and I think the guy who ran the second fastest time, Usain Bolt, was yet to appear on the scene. And the ladies' side, the same. They had the 100 meters world record holder, the second fastest time in the world that year, yet they did not. And both of those elite athletes were running, but they could not register gold, silver, or bronze. So what happened? What happened? And Dr. Guinness says he feels that what happened in that race is a beautiful analogy to what happened to the American state. The 4x100 meters race, the American men dropped the baton. They could not pass the baton from one person to the other. And when the women came up to run, the very same thing happened as well. They could not pass on the baton. And that is what cost them. And he looks at America, the state we knew before. You know, the country formed by the Puritans and all these great ideologies that were strongly founded in the Judeo-Christian worldview. A nation that in their currency, they actually have the famous words, "In God we trust." So he looks at America then and America today, and he was basically trying to answer the question, what happened? And there are many other things he talks about, but one of the most critical is mentorship. He says there was a generation that failed to hand over the baton. Hence, the state of affairs we are seeing in the United States today. Failure to hand over the baton. What are you doing with the baton? That would be my charge to us. And I'll conclude, since you guys were doing an exposition on the life of Paul and Timothy, I'll conclude with the words of the Apostle Paul to Timothy, 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 2. Paul writes to Timothy and says, these were some of his last words, I think this was the last episode he did. He says, "And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust these to reliable men who will also be qualified to teach others." And in that one scripture, you can actually see 4 generations of disciples and disciple making. The baton handed over 3 times. What are you doing with the baton? I pray we'll have the right answer to that question.
The Fellowship of Christian Unions, reaching students, changing nations.